Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Laurie Lamson, author of 21 Ways to Soul Connect. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Thank you very much.
Are you ready to get started?
Sure.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
What I would say is to, first of all, that writing to me is kind of sacred. Storytelling is sacred. So take it seriously. But also that untrained, inexperienced people struggle with the same thing that professional writers do. So you're not alone. It's just being able to stick with it. Finding the clarity about your story, trusting your voice, allowing yourself to write about uncomfortable topics, connecting with your own emotions, and then the fear of the criticism and all of that. Professional writers go through all the same things that new writers do. So you're not alone. It's part of the journey, and just realize this is part of it, that you're going to come out feeling pretty good on the other end if you stick with it.
Well, and you have written a variety of books. So I know we talked about 21 Days to Soul Connect in your intro, but you've also done Quest for Peace and several other books. So would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm actually primarily a script and screenwriter, but I've also done, my own fiction and nonfiction work. Quest for Peace is a little short story that I published as a Kindle book. It's self-published. And that was actually for Peace Day. I used to have parties for International Peace Day and invite people to come and do something creative about peace. And that was a story that I made up for that event. And then I later published it.
And then you've also had some other books as well, right?
Yes, as an editor. They call it an author when you put together a book that is a compilation with lots of different contributors. And that is the 3 books in the Now Write series that I worked on. Now Write is a series of 5 books that are writing exercise anthologies. There's 85 to 95 contributors in each book. My aunt started this project with Now Write fiction and nonfiction. And then for the 3rd book, I suggested, what about screenwriting? So we ended up collaborating on that one, Now Write screenwriting. And then Now Write Mysteries, she was working on, she passed away, and I took it over. And then Now Write Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror was the most recent one. I did that all by myself with all my contributors.
Excellent. And I believe you mentioned you went the indie route, but you also went through publisher as well, correct?
Right. I have experience with self-publishing, and I have experience with working with the publisher.
And which publisher were you working with?
They were called Tarcher Penguin, and now it's Tarcher Perigee. And Penguin was bought by Random House, so now it's Penguin Random House is the parent publisher, and Tarcher Perigee is the small house that I'm under with these 5 books. They're still selling them, and they're still happening. And they also were published 3 of them were published in Japan and Korea. My agent, I think, sold them separately. Science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and screenwriting. I don't think mysteries, but those 2 are Japan and Korea as well.
That's quite the combination.
Yeah.
Well, what do you feel?
Well, these books, the first one. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just going to ask you, what do you feel with this journey so far is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, I was lucky with the Now Write books because my aunt already had an established brand, but she was out of touch with her agent. So we picked a new agent, and I did a book proposal for the book that we were working on, and it worked out. And it turned out she already had sold a book to the same publisher, which was Julia Cameron's Artist Way. So she already was familiar with our publisher, and she was familiar with our series, so it was kind of a good natural fit. So I was lucky that way. I haven't really gone and found a publisher on my, an agent on my own. And I've self-published things. So basically, I'm my publisher on a few things, like 21 Ways to Soul Connect. And I also have another one, Witch Little's Magic in the Garden, kind of a children's book. And so the hardest thing nowadays, I think, first of all, is getting an agent interested in what you're doing. So it would really start with writing a really good book proposal. And part of that is your platform nowadays. How are you going to help market this? No matter how big your publisher is, they're really expecting the author to do a lot. So if you already have an audience, obviously that helps you a lot. And if you have plans for how you're going to help promote your book, that helps a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest eye-opener, is that people need to realize, for the most part, you go traditionally published, you are still expected to do the lion's share of your marketing. They're just not going to do it for you.
Right. So for now, right, I have done a lot. I'm lucky. I have a series. It's not just one book. And there's a little bit of something for everyone, for a lot of different kind of writers. So I've done a lot of things for this book series, like being on. I've put together a lot of panels with contributors at writers' conferences and things like that, and those have been really great. I just bring a few contributors. I kind of look at what their exercises are and how they might be compatible, and I have them talk about their exercise and why it's important. And then what's always happened is a conversation develops between these different writers, and they talk more deeply about craft and business, and it ends up being just really, really interesting. So I've been lucky to do that. That's one of the strategies that I took on, having all these authors involved.
Excellent. And that's going to tie in perfectly into our next question, and that is to please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launches that has worked well.
Okay, so that was one of them. I've gotten the books out there by bringing some of my contributors and having interesting conversations. One other thing happened that was really interesting. It just really fell into my lap. There's this organization, International Screenwriters Association, and when Now Write Screenwriting came out, the head of that organization reached out to me, and I thought he was trying to sell me something, but actually he was looking for someone to host his telecon, and he thought I would be a good fit. So I had never done anything like that before, but I said, okay, I'll try it, and it was really fun. And a lot of my contributors ended up being guests on the show. Either they already knew them or I invited them, and so this was twice a month for almost 4 years. And every time I introduced and ended, I had the opportunity to introduce my book, Now Write Screenwriting, and a lot of times a contributor there to have a very in-depth conversation and then Q&A. And so it definitely raised the awareness of Now Write Screenwriting, and by extension, some of the other books, because the genre books are also relevant to screenwriters. And a lot of the screenwriters were interested in writing books. And it also led to me having some probably private consultation and editing clients, because they got to know me. So I think I like that kind of marketing approach where it's very content. You're offering something of value and giving people a chance to get to know you as a person, who you are, how you think, your integrity, all that kind of stuff, your attitude. You could tell from all those, I'm very into encouraging other people's creativity. It's not just about me and my project.
I could tell that just
so people
with the
that
genres.
would tune in sometimes. Every time.
No, I was gonna say I could just tell with your genres how creative you are with this. So I just wanted to make that a point there.
Thank you. Well, you know what? The truth is, I always was a very creative person. I always was a big reader. I loved reading, and I had a lot of insecurity, and it took a lot for me just to even start writing. I wanted to be a writer since I could barely read, but I didn't really get serious about writing until I was almost 30. It took that long even just to get started. So I had a lot of trouble. I had a lot of blocks. So I have a lot of compassion for my fellow and sister writers. So I try to do my part to help them, encourage them, polish their work when they're they need an editor.
Well,
Whatever I can
well,
give to other writers, I like to do that.
well, and I'll tell you this too. So I actually wrote my first book at 40. And so over the last 3.5 years, I now have 14 books out there. It's just so amazing that once you get started, you can't stop. And like you, my books are in different areas. So I have books on self-help. I have books on book publishing, books on podcasting that are coming out, books on travel. So it's just all those things that really spark my own creativity. That is my style for writing.
Yeah.
Because you hear people say stay in your lane, but I'm like, no, I'm going to go all over the place because wherever my creativity goes, that's where I'm going. When I get inspired by being in Maui, I'm going to write a book about it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, you can have multiple lanes because you have multiple interests. So as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're interested, go for it. I mean, that idea, only write what you know, I think it more applies to what you know emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily worlds, planets, countries, hobbies. Like once, for example, I was hired to rewrite a screenplay, and they wanted to make it more of the swimming thing, and I didn't know that much about swimming, and in this southern town. So I did a lot of research, and it was fun for me. Research is a big thing for me. I really enjoy it. And so I did a lot of research, and I included little things that I learned and incorporated them in the script, in the story, and the characters. You can learn, and I mean, we wouldn't have Star Wars. We wouldn't have so many amazing things if people didn't use their imagination and just wrote about what they personally know and have experienced. I think that refers more to emotionally what you understand, but even that can be stretched with imagination.
Absolutely. And I love your idea about putting on panels at these conferences because one of my projects for 2019 is we're going to be creating a Get Published anthology where we're going to reach out to most likely 100 different authors out there that are wanting to that have either written their book or are in the process of doing it to share that same journey. And I just love the idea of having different panels at these events and conferences because one, it's a great way to promote the book. It's a great way to potentially promote volume 2, but also to keep your name out there and also to be able to give some great value to have people in those panels where they can talk about the book, they can talk about their own experiences, their areas of expertise, where you bring the business approach into it. Just such a great idea.
Absolutely. It's so great. I did a panel for this. They usually do writers' conferences, but they also do a monthly thing. And I put together a panel for them. And I didn't even realize one of my guys was really good at marketing and self-promoting. And he was so valuable. He gave so much interesting information to the crowd. And, of course, the organizer was thrilled. And also sometimes I do little workshops. I've done this for them, too, where I give an exercise from the book and have the class do it. Like there's some of the exercises are group exercises, so I use one of those and have the class do one and read what they did. It just was so much fun. And it's an intro to the book. And then also at these workshops or at these conferences, they give you an opportunity to sell your book. So I also sold some directly to people, which was fun.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book? And what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
You know, that is a hard question because I've read so many books and love so many. So what I flashed on is one of my favorite children's books from when I was a kid, and it's called Arabella, the Heavenly Cat. It's actually a Dutch book. It had very adorable drawings that really captured my imagination, and it's about a cat that goes to heaven and comes back and visits their person, their mommy, I would call it. Visits the person, and the person gets kind of cat complex because she's seeing cats further around. So I love that story because the pictures captured my imagination. I had a cat, and I could relate to having a cat, and it was kind of comforting to think my cat might come visit me. And it also made me think about there's more to life than meets the eye. It opened my view on life. It's not just what you see.
Absolutely. For our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
I have a lot of those too, but one of my favorites is the future is written in pencil. That's one of my favorites. It reminds me not to be stuck in a point of view or a direction or whatever. You can always change course. yes, you're set on a course. It's kind of can feel like you're going somewhere inevitable, but it's written in pencil. There could be surprises on the same course you're on, and you can also shift your course by making decisions and taking actions.
That is an awesome quote.
Thank you.
I like that. Well, Laurie, I want to thank you for being a guest on this show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Well, probably the website for the Now Write book might be the easiest. It's nowwrite, NOWWRITE.net. I have other sites, but that's probably the quickest and easiest. And I have a consulting page, and I have my page. You could email me from there.
Well, Laurie, I want to thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Well, thank you so much, and same to you.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.